Welcome to the Pardis channel. Today we explain Genesis chapter 32 in a clear and simple way, step by step. Okay, let's dive into this because honestly, this chapter drops us right into one of the absolute most tense, deeply human moments in the entire text. I mean, think about the setup here. Jacob has just spent 20 long, hard years away from home, working for his uncle Laban. He's finally packed up his massive family, his flocks, his servants, literally all his belongings, and he's heading back to the land of his fathers. But there is a massive roadblock. Standing directly between him and his homeland is the one thing he has been running from for 2 straight decades: his older brother Esau. Now, you'll probably remember that when they last saw each other 20 years ago, Esau had actually vowed to kill Jacob for taking his blessing. So Jacob isn't just going for a nice family reunion, he is walking straight into a deeply unresolved, highly dangerous past. So here is our agenda for this explainer. First, we'll look at the context and the impending meeting. Then, we'll break down Jacob's prayer and preparation. Third, we're going to examine that famous wrestling until the dawn. Fourth, the giving of his new name, Israel. Fifth, we'll synthesize the key ideas and meaning. And finally, wrap it up with some real-world life lessons and a recap. Section 1, Context and the Impending Meeting. Facing the past. Jacob is on the move. He managed to escape Laban, but now he literally has to face the brother he deceived. There's no going around Esau. He has to go right through him. Let's look right at the text. Verse 1 tells us that as Jacob goes on his way, angels of God meet him. Now, you might be wondering, why angels right at this exact moment? Well, it's a subtle, beautiful reassurance from the divine right before his absolute greatest trial. But notice this. Jacob doesn't just sit back, cross his arms, and rely entirely on miracles. Not at all. In verses 3 through 5, he immediately takes practical action. He sends messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. And I want you to listen to the specific language he commands his messengers to use. He says, "Thus shall you say to my lord Esau, thus says your servant Jacob." See what he's doing there? He is deliberately lowering himself. He's telling Esau, look, I have wealth, I have cattle and servants. I'm not coming to take anything from you. I just want to find favor in your eyes. It is a super humble, carefully calculated diplomatic mission. But before we see how Esau responds to that message, let's look at the name Jacob gives the location where those angels met him back in verse 2. He calls the place Mahanaim. Now in Hebrew, Mahanaim literally translates to 2 camps. Jacob basically looks around and realizes he is standing in 2 realities at exactly the same time. There's his own physical, earthly camp, with his wives, children, and all the livestock, and right alongside it is this unseen spiritual camp of God. It's this profound realization that he is absolutely not walking into this terrifying danger completely alone. However, that spiritual comfort gets put to the test almost instantly. In verse 6, the messengers return, and guys, they do not bring a welcome letter. They tell Jacob, we went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him. Just take a second to really feel the crushing weight of that number. 400 men. This is not a brotherly greeting. This is a private army. For a guy traveling with wives, young kids, and super slow-moving herds of sheep, the approach of 400 armed men means one thing: absolute, terrifying destruction. It's a worst-case scenario come to life. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Jacob actually reacts in verses 7 and 8. The text is just strikingly honest here. It says, in great fear and distress, Jacob divided the people. He doesn't puff out his chest and show superhuman, fearless faith. No, he is absolutely terrified. And out of that very real terror, his immediate reaction is a deeply practical defensive strategy. He takes everyone and everything he loves, his people, his flocks, his herds, his camels, and he physically splits them into 2 entirely separate camps. His logic is heartbreaking, but honestly completely pragmatic. He figures if Esau comes and massacres one camp, maybe, just maybe, the other camp will have enough time to flee and survive. He is literally bracing for the absolute worst. Section 2, Jacob's prayer and preparation. Faith and action combined. Once his physical defenses are set, Jacob realizes that earthly strategy just isn't gonna cut it. He combines his actions with a profound spiritual plea. Verses 7 through 21 really show the brilliance of Jacob's mind as he worked chronologically through every single available option he has. Think of it like a timeline. First step, the defensive split of the camps we just talked about. Second step, he offers up an earnest, incredibly desperate prayer to God. Third step, he pivots right back to practical action by selecting a massive financial tribute for Esau. And the fourth step, he executes a brilliant psychological strategy by sending those gifts in staggered waves. But before we get to the gifts, let's look closer at that prayer, because I'm telling you, it is one of the most beautifully structured prayers in the entire text. In verses 9 through 12, Jacob approaches the divine step by step. First, he starts by invoking the God of his fathers, Abraham and Isaac. Then he politely, but firmly, reminds God that this incredibly dangerous journey wasn't entirely his own idea. God was the one who commanded him to go back to his relatives. Then he totally strips away his ego, confessing his complete unworthiness of all the kindness God has shown him. Next, he gets specific. He pleads for deliverance straight from his brother's hand, openly admitting he is terrified for the mothers and the children. And he closes it out by reminding God of the ultimate promise, that his descendants would be as numerous as the sand of the sea. It is a total masterclass in plain text, the pashhat, showing a very desperate man reasoning with God using God's own previous promises. I really want to pause on this exact quote from verse 10 because it's so powerful. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. Jacob continues in that verse by saying, I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two camps. Just think about the extreme vulnerability here. 20 years ago, he crossed this exact same river running for his absolute life with nothing but a wooden walking stick. Now he's returning wealthy, with a huge, sprawling family. He recognizes that every single thing he has is a complete gift. And standing there, facing the reality of 400 armed men, he realizes how incredibly easily it could all be wiped out in an instant. And this brilliantly illustrates what he does next in verses 13 through 21. After praying, Jacob doesn't just sit around waiting for a magical miracle. He gets straight back to work. He selects a staggering amount of wealth: 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 camels with their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. Fun fact, to put that into perspective, in the ancient world, this amount of livestock was essentially a king's ransom. We're talking staggering, economy-shifting wealth here. But the genius is that he doesn't send them all at once. He divides them into separate herds, puts actual physical space between them, and tells his servants to walk ahead of him. The plan is that when Esau meets the first group, the servant will say, "This is a gift from your servant Jacob." Then Esau keeps walking and meets the second group, then the third. Jacob's goal here is entirely psychological. He wants to slowly, wave by wave by wave, wear down his brother's ancient anger before they ever even make eye contact. Section 3, Wrestling Until the Dawn, the Midnight Struggle. This is where the story shifts gears completely. It goes from a tense family dispute into one of the most dramatic, mysterious, and unforgettable events in the entire biblical narrative. In verses 22 and 23, we get the geography of this moment. In the dead of night, Jacob gets up, takes his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons, and literally crosses the ford of the Jabbok River. He sends all of his possessions across the stream as well. Look at what he's essentially doing here. He has already stripped away his wealth with the massive gifts to Esau, and now he is stripping away the physical presence and comfort of his family. He has emptied himself of absolutely every earthly comfort and protection. He is totally exposed. And then we read verse 24. It's a simple, profound sentence. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. Out of the pitch-black darkness, this unidentified, mysterious figure engages Jacob in brutal hand-to-hand combat. And they don't just scuffle for a minute, they fight for hours. Verse 25 tells us that when the man saw he could not overpower Jacob, he reached out and touched the socket of Jacob's hip, violently wrenching it entirely out of joint as they wrestled. But the crazy thing, even crippled, completely exhausted, Jacob flat out refuses to stop fighting. As the sun finally begins to rise, the mysterious man demands to be released. But Jacob, clinging to his opponent with everything he has left, issues this incredible demand in verse 26. I will not let you go unless you bless me. Now, if you have ever wrestled or been in a fight, you know that even 3 minutes is utterly exhausting. Jacob has been grappling for hours, and now, with a dislocated hip, his resilience is just unbreakable. He has spent his entire life grasping for blessings, right? First from his brother, then his father, then his uncle. But here, in the dirt, in sheer physical agony, he demands a true divine blessing. He's making a statement. He will not run away anymore. Section 4. A new name, Israel. Transformation at sunrise. the resolution of this midnight physical struggle brings a permanent fundamental change to Jacob's core identity. So the crucial point is right here in verses 27 and 28 when the man asks, "What is your name?" He makes Jacob literally state his identity out loud. "Jacob," he answers. "Yaov," the one who grasps the heel, the one with a long history of deception and fleeing. Then the man declares, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel." Yisrael. And why? Because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome. Guys, this is a monumental shift. He is no longer the man who sneaks around the back to take what he wants. He is now the man who stands face to face with his deepest fears, with his God, and fights through the agonizing pain to survive. In verses 29 and 30, Jacob asks for the man's name in return, but the man refuses to give it, simply asking, "Why do you ask my name?" But he does grant the blessing right there. Jacob suddenly realizes the sheer magnitude of what just happened. He names that specific patch of dirt Peniel, which literally translates to the face of God. He says, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." He understands he just survived the ultimate encounter. As the narrative of the chapter closes in verses 31 and 32, the sun finally rises over Peniel, but the new man Israel doesn't walk away completely whole. He walks away with a permanent limp because of his wrenched hip. And the text plainly states that this exact event is actually the origin of a lasting Jewish dietary law. To this day, Israelites do not eat the sciatic tendon attached to the hip socket. It serves as a literal physical reminder of their ancestors' transformative midnight struggle. He got the blessing, absolutely, but he will carry the physical scar of it for the rest of his life. Section 5. Key Ideas and Meaning. Simple Truths of the Text. When we step back and look at the literal truths, the pashhat, of this text, some incredibly powerful concepts start to emerge. Here are the core takeaways we can draw from this. First off, human fear is entirely natural. Even with a camp of literal angels nearby, Jacob was terrified of Esau, and the text doesn't judge him for it. Second, faith isn't passive. Jacob prayed desperately, sure, but he also divided his camps and sent staggered gifts. Spiritual prayer and practical action must work hand in hand. Third, facing our past requires intense vulnerability. Jacob literally stripped away his family and his worldly possessions just to stand alone at the river. Fourth, true blessings don't come easy. They almost always require wrestling through our own darkest nights. And finally, transformation leaves a mark. Genuine growth changes you, and sometimes, much like Jacob's limp, you carry the evidence of that struggle with you forever. Section 6, Life Lessons and Recap, applying the chapter today. So, what does all this mean for us, the focused learners, in our actual everyday lives? Let's move to and see how this builds into a practical framework for facing your own personal Esau. Whatever that looming confrontation, broken relationship, or deep fear is in your life. First, do the work. Prepare practically, just as Jacob carefully divided his camps and meticulously organized his gifts. Second, be ruthlessly honest in your prayers or your quiet meditations. Admit exactly what you are terrified of and acknowledge your own flaws. Don't hide it. Third, recognize that eventually you cannot hide behind your wealth, your status, or even your family and friends. You have to be willing to face the core issue totally alone. And fourth, when the struggle finally comes, hold on. Even when you are exhausted, even when it literally hurts, refuse to let go until you found the blessing or the core lesson wrapped up in that challenge. To sum it all up, Genesis 32 plainly shows us that running away keeps us as Jacob, but struggling directly with our fears, our unresolved past, and our God is the exact thing that transforms us into Israel. It is absolutely not an easy process, but it really is the only way to truly return home. So I'll leave you with this. What is the Esau that you've been running from? And are you finally ready to wrestle with it in the dark? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.